Welcome to the Energetically You podcast, where we will be talking about healthy habits, abundant mindset, and optimal wellness. I'm your host, Megan Swan, creator of the Sustainable Integrated Wellness Approach. At 30, I sold everything and went on my own eat, pray, love journey, if you will. And now, at 41, I'm still on my first stop here in Mexico, loving life and feeling more energy than ever before. This podcast is for ambitious women who are looking to level up their energy so that they feel happier and more productive throughout their day in all of their projects and passions. Inside, we are going to be talking about ways to truly tune in to our minds and bodies in new ways to leverage our natural energy sources. So let's dive in. We are interviewing today Cindy Markle. She is an expert in the energetics and the power of using essential oils and holistic modalities to help women post 50 with hormone and energetic, all things. They just feel fabulous. And I'm really interested to hear her thoughts. She has been doing this for many years, and she has a very unique niche that she likes to focus on. So welcome, Cindy. How are you today?
Thank you. I am doing well, and I appreciate this experience to share from my perspective about essential oils.
Amazing. So tell us, how long ago did you discover essential oils?
You know, I was backpacking through Europe at a time when a lot of my friends in Europe were using essential oils. That was my first exposure, and I completely disregarded it. I came from a Western medical paradigm, and I thought essential oils were silly, expensive potpourri. I was not interested.
Yeah. I think we also need to be honest that there are a lot on the market that are expensive potpourri, right?
Right.
Definitely important that you have like a good source of quality grade. But tell us more about your journey in really like bringing them into your life and your lifestyle.
So I'm a medical technologist by formal education. And when my husband and I and our 4 kids got into horseback riding, I was afraid of horses. So I got thrown off many times, and I ended up with some serious spinal injuries. And I went, of course, to Western medicine, consulted with top neurosurgeons, and I found out that really what Western medicine can offer is medication, steroid injections to manage the pain, or surgical intervention. So a titanium plate fusion in my upper spine. And I really didn't like either of those options. So I opened my mind and I began to explore how I could find some natural ways to support wellness and maybe restore my health.
Amazing.
So at that time, I actually attracted my mentor, and she gave me a technique that essential oils along the spine, and it made such a difference that I got really excited, and I began to study and learn everything I could. And so fast forward to today, this is what I do. I educate, share, train. Yeah.
I love that. And so where do you still feel like you find a lot of resistance? Or are you educating to groups that are already pretty open-minded about the power of essential oils?
You know, there's a lot of resistance, of course, and I can relate to that. So I appeal to like medical science-based thinking, using credentials and using the science. And for people who are just uncertain and, you know, even from a spiritual, conservative, fear of new age type mysticism, I can, you know, address the biblical references. So it's really nice to have a background from science to theology and everywhere in between. So I can relate to people.
Definitely. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
can you give our listeners like an idea of how using essential oils you would treat the pain of a back injury? Because people think of, I don't know, like maybe they might use essential oils for a light headache. I actually found it really helpful. I got migraines just when I was pregnant, when I was taking off and landing in airplanes, and the peppermint halo thing was like life-saving. Yeah. So I'm curious, is it a similar sort of prescription in air quotes for something with such severe pain, or how do you present these things to people in terms of your story and your experience?
Well, first of all, I usually just throw out a disclaimer. I'm not a physician. This is my story, my experience. Everybody's different. So I like to relieve myself from any responsibility. It's our own responsibility to check it out with our medical professionals. So sure. I don't diagnose, prescribe, or treat, right? So once I get really clear on that, I just say, hey, I apply oils topically every day. I use oils in every way, actually. I ingest, inhale, and apply topically. What I love is that there are essential oils that support our body's inflammatory response. And where there's pain, we know there's inflammation. So, and I use oil-infused products as well throughout my lifestyle. But it's not just essential oils. As you know, I love the work that you're doing, Megan, because nutrition and mindset, and it's all a holistic part of the puzzle, right? So yeah. I hope that answers your question. Yeah,
definitely. So let's talk specifically about feeling more energetic and ultimately longevity. I mean, you touched on inflammation, and obviously we want to mitigate, extreme inflammation, but most people have low-level inflammation based on the average American diet or all sorts of sort of common lifestyle choices that we make, that we tend to be slightly inflamed a little bit of the time. Or maybe it can be as simple as someone who works out a lot and they are dealing with inflammation from that. We have, it's not always a negative inflammation, if you will, but what do you do personally in terms of feeling energetic through the day, or when you're taking longevity into account?
So when we talk about longevity, first, kind of before I dive into that excellent question, I like to think about vitality as well. And you mentioned energy and feeling good. And so, that saying I was thinking about before we started our conversation today, I was thinking, it's one thing to add years to our life, but to add life to our years, right? That's what's really important to me. And so with essential oils, one really simple way that I use essential oils is for detoxing. Like lemon essential oil is profound. And just adding it to drinking water, and just the way that D-limonene that's present in citrus oils, as we know, it seems like it sort of metabolizes the toxins that are clogging our cellular receptor sites. So I do tend to wax science-y, a little science here, kind of nerdy, so bear with me. But if you think about your cells in a simplest way, and you have this lock and key mechanism. So when we have these toxic thoughts, toxic emotions, toxic substance, all the lotions and potions that we've been putting on ourselves over the years, that's clogging these lock and key mechanisms. And so I love that essential oils begin to break down and cleanse cellular receptor sites. And so there's oils that are high in phenolic compounds, for example, like thyme and oregano, cinnamon bark, clove. Some of those oils are excellent when we're talking about longevity, because they're cleansing the toxins that are being encapsulated in our fat, in our tissues, and literally on our cellular receptor sites. So to me, it's a gradual, it's not an overnight one drop of oil and you're fixed,
Yeah,
So,
that's definitely an aspect of really all holistic wellness, right? It's getting away from that quick fix, having a little bit more patience, and understanding it took you maybe several years or a decade to get to the place where you are. It doesn't really make sense that the solution should take 7 days or
right.
a couple doses of a pill. So can you specifically, because you just touched on a bunch of oils that I think there's a lot of misunderstanding or misuse of. Can you tell us specifically how would you use, because oregano oil, for example, is really powerful, but you're not applying that topically, I wouldn't imagine.
Actually, I do apply it topically, and I always have a carrier oil available, and most people maybe need that carrier oil to dilute it, but I actually apply many drops directly on the spine and feather them in. And most of the time, it's really not, there's no discomfort. But in some people's case, especially on, that kind of more sensitive area, like your neck skin is highly sensitive, then blending with a carrier oil, like, coconut oil, olive oil, it just slows the absorption, and it's an immediate, relief from any heat, tingling, discomfort. And of course, on the bottoms of the feet, that's an easy way to apply oils, and most people have no problem whatsoever. So that's been my experience since 2006. About every month, I get a session that just helps me maintain the way I feel. I mentioned surgery. I never had the surgery. And in fact, I haven't used an over-the-counter med or pharmaceutical since 2006 for back pain or anything. So it's really quite a profound transformation in my life.
Yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir. I know, I think it takes time, I think, well, I'll ask you, how do you recommend, what are 3 oils that someone could start with if they're completely new to the world of oils and, let's face it, a little skeptical about how life-changing it can be?
Lavender. Everybody's going to immediately go to lavender because it's such a gentle, nurturing oil, and it covers so many bases. I would start off with lavender, and citrus oils are super profound in what they can do. And so they're, with some precaution, of course, as you know, they can be photosensitive when you apply them topically. So I just say, man, drink water out of, a metal or glass container and add a few drops of citrus oils to taste. And it's just a wonderful way to begin that cleansing, detoxing process. So, and I just really like frankincense. Another one of those wonderful uplifting oils that, so many people have trouble relaxing, quieting, just calming themselves. So I think frankincense is very powerful to quiet brain chatter, just inhaling. Those are some of the oils that come to mind right off.
Yeah, I love that you brought all those up. I mean, I personally I live here in the tropics in Mexico. And so, mosquito bites are kind of like a year-round thing. So I constantly have lavender with me and just apply lavender directly to my bites and my kids. And I'd love if you could talk a little bit about the history of frankincense, because I think it's one of those oils where it's just so sacred and you smell it and it's hard to explain, that you sense like the deep history and just how special it is. It's also a little bit more expensive than some of the other oils, so more precious in that sense.
Oh, I love to talk about frankincense. And, for people who recognize the ancient documents like scripture, the Bible, it's referenced often throughout the Bible, even in medieval times and the Catholic Church. I've traveled throughout Europe quite a bit and touring cathedrals. Even to this day, you'll have that aroma of burning frankincense resin. Why? Because it quiets and kind of shifts the brainwaves and brings you into a meditative state. And that's so important, especially in this time in our global experience with so much media and fear and anxiety. I really love frankincense for that reason. And it's not new. It certainly, goes way back into Old Testament times. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like such a perfect Christmas gift. Like it's like coming up. So tell us about your projects. How are you incorporating essential oils into your work currently?
I'm working with a woman who has Parkinson's disease. And not that I, remember the disclaimer, but I'm helping her through the introduction of the inhalation of essential oils to shift in the limbic part of our brain, where we store this, the sense of smell directly, as you know, and then memories and emotions. And so she's really dealing with a lot of the anxiety that has kind of led into this diagnosis of Parkinson's. And so she's learning, she uses lavender to calm herself down. And I think it even might support the dopamine production that's compromised in a Parkinson's patient. So that's one thing that's very exciting. Just shifting mindset to find a higher level of wellness and well-being, just eliminating dis-ease, literally. So that's one of the projects that's really exciting for me, because the correlation of the increased amount of anxiety in our world today, for all the reasons that we don't even have to mention, right? Mm-hmm. And the correlation to the increase in diagnoses of Parkinson's and other neurological issues.
It's exploded.
It's exploded. And it's important that people know that they have hope. There is a way to take charge of their mind. And I think essential oils can be instrumental in amplifying our intention to be calmer, to, journal into gratitude and really support those kinds of intentions.
I love that. Have you read James Nestor's book, Breath?
I have not, but I will.
You need to read this book.
Thank you.
The subtitle is The New Science on Breathing. And one of the things that I found pretty mind-blowing was in the brain, if you're looking at the amount of brain dedicated to each of the senses, the amount of brain that's dedicated to the olfactory system is like 20 or 100 times bigger than any other sense, compared to like how much we really think of sense being like the main way we make decisions, right? Or that, the main, I don't know, that we obsess about the most. I mean, those of us who are obsessed with essential oils, maybe, but I just found it really informative in terms of the power of aromatherapy. And so I thought about what you're telling us about your project.
Thank you for that. And when we're talking about, aromatherapy and the actual power of the olfactory system, one of my mentors introduced we all know you can put a drop of oil and create this like scent tent and inhale.
Scent tent.
It's kind of a cool little catchy phrase, but man, if you use a little tiny porcelain dish or cup like this and add several drops of essential oil and then breathe it in, there's no compromise even with our own body chemistry, like from the palm. So that's just like a real high upgrade in introducing the true, unadulterated, non-compromised molecules. It's really important. And you commented at the very beginning of our talk about how many oils are on the market, adulterated, compromised. I find that really a concern to the innocent consumer who, sees something on the shelf in a gas station, right? Mm-hmm. A truck stop, pure essential oil. And they think, wow, that's a lot cheaper than I've heard of. Let me just buy that. And it's it's compromised. So in our conversation, I really like to consider the energetic integrity of essential oils in addition to purity and potency. I don't think a lot of people really realize the energy of the oils. So that's been important to me.
Yeah, I know I've recently been getting into the individual frequency of each oil, right?
Right.
So interesting. So, do you want to expand on that a little bit before we go about the energetics of, or maybe like a way that people can, I mean, I know now that I've been around essential oils for a long time, like if you can just tell if it's more fragrant or like an artificial fragrance than a pure natural oil. It's somewhat intuitive, but I feel like if you're not used to, or you get used to that fabricated scent, and then it's difficult for people to know the quality difference of something as simple as lavender, for example.
That's a really important conversation to have, I think, in like lavender, for example, or peppermint. Those oils have such a range of normalcy, if you will, in their fragrance. So, and yet, just like vintage wine, I often explain to people about essential oils are like vintage wines in the fact that the same field of plants from one season to another, if there's different levels of rainfall or sunshine or whatever, it can actually impact the aroma, just like the taste or the flavor of wine. And so, people don't always understand that peppermint has a huge range of perfectly acceptable and normal fragrance. And sometimes there are companies that sort of embellish the smell and create a more standardized, sweet peppermint stick candy smell for peppermint, for example. Mm-hmm. And they're actually compromising the efficacy of the oil itself by adding something that would just neutralize and standardize. Mm-hmm. So it kind of makes it more like a fragrance grade or an industrial grade oil rather than a therapeutic, unadulterated, untampered with oil. It's interesting. I was thinking about you being in Mexico, and a couple of years ago, I was at a resort, a really high-end resort, and there was a spa, and I saw this gentleman lining up some roller bottles of blends of oil. And I talked to him, and because that's my passion, right? And he said it was his formulation, it was his branding and line, and yet he was setting them up in clear bottles. And I thought, clear glass, sunlight, just simple sunlight can change the molecular structure of these delicate molecules. So I asked him about that, and he said, well, the darker glass, the brown or blue opaque glass, is more expensive. So I thought to myself, boy, I'm wondering if the blends that he chose, the oils that he chose, as a broker of oils, he may have compromised, and most likely did, because he wasn't aware. And so that's one area of just lack of awareness, and, you have a compromised product.
Yeah. So if people want to reach out to you so they can know that they're getting therapeutic grade, what's the best way to connect with you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, and Cindy Miracle on Facebook. I'm wearing a pink jacket. There's a couple of, Facebook accounts out there with my name on them, but that's a good way. PM me. I love to respond and just kind of connect on a personal level. CindyMiracle.com. That's CindyMaricle.com is my website, and I just would love to visit with anyone if they have questions. So thank you for that.
Amazing. Right before we go, can you just share one of your favorite blends to just chill out or like make your home feel that much cozier for the fall season we're coming into?
Ooh, well, when you said fall season, I have to think of, so I'm working on reducing caloric intake, right? And, we love to bake in the holidays. So I like to blend cinnamon bark, nutmeg, vanilla, and clove. I just love that. And it kind of makes my home smell like a snickerdoodle cookie without the calories, right? So
you get a little bit of the fix, right?
Yeah. And it just creates that holiday, we talked about the aroma and the memory and the emotion. And so it brings you back to grandma's house at Thanksgiving or whatever. It's
just so welcoming.
Very welcoming. Thank you for asking. Yeah. What's your favorite?
Oh, I grew up in Calgary, Alberta. So I'm obsessed with pine, any sort of pine combination. I also love frankincense, any of the resins. I'm sort of more into the earthy. I do like this type of cinnamon things that you mentioned around Christmas and that time of year. But and sometimes just simple things like lemon to lift the mood. I love grapefruit in the morning. Yeah.
It's really interesting, just on a final note, you mentioned pine oil and some of the conifers, and, living up in the northern country, these trees that are kind of grown under the aurora borealis. I don't know if you were far enough north to see the northern lights, but those trees are such high energy. The oils from those trees are super high energy, and pine in particular, and some of the fir oils are very important for some of the health challenges that we are experiencing right now. So that might be a hint to really continue to expose yourself to a lot of pine and conifers. Very grounding.
I love that you mentioned that. All right. I will keep at it.
Keep at it.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And I will everything that you mentioned, we'll leave in the show notes so people can connect with you. And thank you for your time and for your wisdom.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Energetically You. I hope that this episode has helped you to tune into your natural energy sources so that you feel more energized and focused throughout your day. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a second to rate and review. Each review helps us to help more ambitious women just like you accomplish their goals. Don't forget to take a screenshot, share it on social or in your Instagram stories, and tag me at Megan Swan Wellness. See you soon.